USA 1, Panama 1. I don't know what to think, Taylor.
Yep.
Listeners,
that's about where I am.
Welcome to the Total Soccer Show. Quick take, hot take after USA's 1-1 draw with Panama. Opening game of the Group Cup for the Group Cup. Opening group game for the US of the Gold Cup.
Still not the most calamitous thing that happened for an American today. I'm counting you as an American. I'm talking about that pronunciation just then versus that Gold Cup performance.
It was one of my countrymen that scored.
Yeah,
so I got that going for me.
Not no more. He's ours now.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yep.
All right, so that's
his new birthplace is Kansas City. I don't know if you knew that or not.
Not Cookfield.
No.
Let's think of it this way. All right, the positive is that Dom Dwyer scored.
Sure.
We can maybe talk about that Kellen Rowe cross and the way he beat that defender by lifting it over his head in slow motion. Outside of that, any other positives in this game?
Brad Guzan made some good saves. I'll give him that. I think he had at least one very good save, one kind of a reaction save, being in the right position. I thought Dax McCarty looked okay in the first half, and then kind of less than okay in the second. And maybe that is a sign.
That's interesting.
Yeah, that is the best thing I can think of. Is that Dax McCarty didn't look good.
So I remember at one point saying, "Let's start building that statue to Dax McCarty now."
Yeah,
right? I was really into him. So what changed? I don't remember him being that bad.
I mean, I think the U.S. midfield was pretty atrocious today.
I was worried about Kellen Acosta. We've been so high on Kellen Acosta for so long, and then today...
I think that goes for both of them. I think it's not just Kellen Acosta. I think he had the more obvious of mistakes. Dax McCarty had some heroic moments. Like the one you're talking about specifically was the one where he cuts out that cross.
Yes.
And does a very good job. But that comes about because he lost the ball. Dax McCarty lost the ball, then he has to get back and make that play.
Cancel the statue plans.
Exactly. So it felt like the United States, and that maybe is a good metaphor for the entire game. It's the United States... like making some good plays, but oftentimes it's either because they had to because of an earlier mistake from an American player, or canceled out by an American player doing something foolish.
That's probably a good way to do this. So again, this is our quick take, hot take. These are our initial reactions. We haven't rewatched anything. We've just hit record as the game ended. We're going to rewatch some stuff and put out a longer review later tonight. What's your overwhelming emotion? I think I started the show with a
I think that's it. I think you might have stolen that from me, in fact, because that's mine exact. I'm just I'm confused by this. I didn't see this coming, to be perfectly honest. Same. It seemed like after the Ghana game, the United States had some things together.
Yeah.
Maybe that Ghana team was just that bad or just that not motivated. I'm not sure. But Panama, I think for large stretches, especially in the second half, completely outplayed the United States. They had two very good chances to score before they eventually scored. Yeah. And I think the United States just didn't look like they had any solutions. It looked like they were all sort of like, it's hot and it's 1-1, that's fine.
So yeah, actually, that's something I want nearly included in the preview. It was in my notes for our preview show, is that the March game against Panama that was so distressing to watch, like kind of boring, and I think we had the same confusion after that game about what was going on. Was played in the heat, the US looked kind of slow and not quite like up for it in the same way. And then this game in Nashville in the middle of summer, we're almost in the exact middle of summer, right? July the 8th, at 3:30 Nashville time. That's asking for sort of maybe a slower paced game with a lot of tired legs.
I mean, maybe, but it's the first game of a major tournament in which players are trying to prove themselves, and they knew what the weather was going to be. So I kind of get frustrated when the weather becomes some sort of cop-out. I think the only time the weather is an appropriate explainer is when it is like absurd, when it's like 110 degrees, which can happen and does happen, or when it's like honestly like youth tournaments when you have like a doubleheader in one day and you have no idea what the tournament's going to be or the weather's going to be. But in this situation, they should have seen it coming and should have adjusted the game plan accordingly. And maybe they did, and maybe that's why things look so static, is because their goal for the game was to have possession and slow things down. But they failed in the first part, which is why they failed in the second part.
One of the things you said to me while we were watching is you felt like McCarty and Acosta, and I feel like a lot of our focus is going to be there because they were so great against Ghana. We were so excited. And this game, the opposite. You thought maybe they were sitting too deep?
Yep.
Defensively and attacking wise?
I think the United States was maybe trying to invite pressure and like maybe forced Panama to come at them a little bit, but it felt like Panama were already planning to do that. So again, that's why it seemed like for large stretches of the game, Panama had possession and were moving the ball around. And a big part of that, I think, is because you had McCarty and Acosta sitting just ahead of that back four, and then Joe Corona was far, far forward ahead of them. And so there was a gap in between that even if you had technically you had numerical superiority because Panama were in that 4-4-2.
Yeah.
Even though they only have two midfielders, they have one of those forwards dropping in. And because of that big gap that I mentioned, and because of that big gap, it doesn't really matter if you have more numbers there if you're not taking advantage of the spacing.
And we're not like packed with pace to hit them on the counter when we did get the ball back, right? Dom Dwyer's pretty fast over the top, but the wingers were Bedoya and Kellen Rowe. Neither of those are guys that you're like, yeah, just play the ball in front of them and they'll run it down.
Yeah, but that's not a big issue for me, because in the preview I was talking about I would rather have technical players against a team that I thought was going to be compact and very resolute in their defending. So it made more sense in my mind to have players that were technical that could move the ball around better. And that's why I thought maybe Bedoya would start, and he did not look technical. He did not look composed on the ball today. He put a lot of passes out of bounds and then looked very frustrated that people didn't anticipate him putting the ball out of bounds. I didn't fully get that. And it just... That was what was like distressing for me, and I'm interested to go back and see maybe what the problems were. But it just felt like this team was set up to have possession, to move the ball around, to do some quick combinations, and then get some opportunities. And instead, like, there was a few moments where they had some good possession, and that's where they tended to get chances. Outside of that, it felt like a lot of just kind of, I don't really know. I'll just move the ball out early and see what happens.
What I remember actually the most is players looking for a pass and not quite figuring out exactly what they wanted to do, like not making quick decisions, and then by the time they got to making a decision... Someone's on them, like Godoy's on Acosta and has taken the ball off of him.
Yeah,
right?
it felt like everybody was taking one touch too many or 1 second too many, and in that little delay, Panama were able to get back and make a tackle or intercept the ball or just put the player under pressure and force a bad pass.
And do you feel like there was? I felt like there weren't enough US players just willing to run at a Panamanian, right? You know what I mean? If there were no options, maybe just dribble at your guy. But it seems like every time was like take the ball, slow it down, look for an option. Oh, there's no options. Like it's almost like they weren't licensed to dribble, so they only could pass. If the passing lanes were closed down, then there was no plan B.
Yeah, and I would say I'm not even sure there was necessarily a plan A. You asked me like what would I be looking for that would make me optimistic in the first 20 minutes of this game. You asked me that in the preview.
Yes, I did, yeah.
And I said like some signs of a clear plan, that there's something that the players are trying to execute.
Yeah.
There were moments when you would see that kind of midfield triangle and there was a little bit of 1 and 2 touch passing. But those moments were few and far between. And outside of that, I felt like you just kept seeing players sort of like, I don't know about that pass. I'm not sure about that one. I'm not sure. And like it just felt like nobody wanted to make a mistake.
Yes.
Like almost like they've been told, like, no matter what you do, just don't mess up. And so everybody didn't want to be the one to mess up. And as soon as your goal is don't make a mistake, you're going to make mistakes.
What about the penalty call at the end? So Alejandro Bedoya goes down, really appealed for a penalty. I think was injured enough to be subbed out, right? He wasn't the original sub. I think Dwyer was coming off for Jordan Morris. In the end, Bedoya comes off.
Yep.
He seemed like he had a genuine claim for a penalty kick.
I mean, I didn't think so at the time. It seemed like it was just sort of the contact in the box. Bedoya goes down and then looks frustrated. We had a tweet from Scott Zawatsky. He's been on the show, referee consultant.
Official referee consultant to the Total Sock Show.
And he said that forearm to the back is not the same thing as shoulder to shoulder, so he says it should have been a penalty. Again, that's one thing we'll have to go back and watch in the fuller replay and see what we think.
But if the US had won this game on a penalty kick, it would have felt maybe like a not particularly justified win.
Yeah, no. Yeah. I mean, I think it's still like I think that was you said that at the time. I think that like they're gonna win this on a penalty or something like that, and then it's gonna be disappointing, or like it'll have like the narrative will be, hey, it's a win, but in reality it won't be that good of a performance. I think you also guaranteed a Jordan Morris winner.
I was feeling very optimistic when he came on. I got a little bit excited when he came on.
And you got very excited when he put in a left-footed cross.
I really thought so. First of all, I was excited that he chose to cross with his left foot. But then the cross kept going and going and going. And I think it ended up switching the field of play to the right wing instead.
Your love of Jordan Morris might be coloring this narrative a little bit. Because that ball was rolling out of bounds. And I think it was either cross with his left foot or maybe try to cut it back. But there's no way that like he could have. Like I don't think
he couldn't have. It was impossible to Trivella.
I don't think so.
I feel like you're underestimating Jordan Morris's willingness to Trivella.
I feel like your narrative was, it's a left-footed cross. It's a left-footed keeping the ball in play, I think is what you said there.
All right, should we do our quick take, hot take on the goals themselves?
Sure.
Let's start with the US's goal because they scored first. My initial take on just seeing it was I love that Kellen Rowe squared that back to or put it back across the box to Dom Dwyer, but I also feel like he got a little bit lucky. I think I'm not sure who the Panamanian defender was, but I think he could have cut it out.
This is where I would say to you, my friend, that you can't have it both ways. You can't say I want a player to take people on and try stuff, and then when Kellen Rowe does that, be like, yeah, but the ball could have been better.
No, okay, I love the taking him on bit. Right? Did he lift it over the guy's head and then get around?
He tries to, and then I think that doesn't work, so then his first touch is away from them, then he gets to the end line, and then he has that cross.
Good enough for me. Kelly Rowe playing on the left, not like he was in the first game. The Ghana game started on the right. I know they switch wings a bit. But yeah, then that low ball back across. Are you more impressed with that than I may be on second viewing?
I mean, I think it's trying to make something happen, and he's kind of aware of where Dom Dwyer roughly is and tries to get the ball to him. I mean, yeah, it could have been cut out. I think it almost was. But it's still Kellen Rowe making up for maybe like a mistaken attempt with that little header by then making a good second touch to get away from the defenders. And then I think more than anything, it's just a really good finish from Dom Dwyer. I thought that was very impressive from him.
2 goals in 2 games for the man from Cookfield.
Yeah, but it's like kind of shooting the ball back across his body into the far side netting when it doesn't look like he should have. That may be. Yeah, so I think it was just a really well taken, like technically well finished goal from Dom Dwyer.
And then on the other side of happiness is Panama's equaliser. So I've got in my notes here after the Dwyer goal in the 50th minute. I've got it down here. All my subsequent notes are Panamanian chances or like Omar Gonzalez blocking. It seemed like there was a good, I want to say basically 10 minutes of Panama attacking after the US scored in the 50th.
At least 5 minutes, because the first note I have is that there's the Torres header and then the save, and then Diaz puts the ball over. Maybe Omar Gonzalez gets a foot to it there.
Yes.
And then the goal's in the 60th minute, and from there's another chance in there for Panama who shoot just wide. So at least 5 minutes of sustained pressure. But I think that, as I said, was probably more so the narrative of the second half, was Panama with better possession and better chances than the United States.
So the goal itself, I hear Bruce Arena saying something to Kellen Rowe. I'm not 100% sure what, but I also see Kellen Rowe, who's the attacking left winger, essentially in a tucked in left back position, and he's having to mark Barcenas, who should not be his man at that point.
I think that's what Arena was telling him, though. I think Arena was telling him he's yours, and I think Rowe kept trying to leave him to step out. I'm not sure. I mean, you would think Villafana, but Villafana was only about 5 or 10 yards ahead of him to the left. So, but I think maybe Rowe wanted to go. Yeah. You did see him kind of start to step, and then you heard that screaming, and then he stayed with him and tried to get goal side.
But then he didn't do a very good defensive job on Barcenas.
It's almost like he's not a left back. Yeah.
When he went to the end line. He has played there for New England. I checked some of the lineups. He tries the slide tackle, which, in my opinion, and I'm a slide tackle connoisseur, let it be known, was not necessary at that point, at least on first viewing. Like, I feel like he could have just stood him up.
You think he could have stood him up?
Yeah, because you can stand him up and like prevent the cross and make him turn back the other way, or just make him try and beat you a different way. But once you go to ground, you actually give away a lot of your defensive space by going to ground, right?
Yeah.
Because you flatten yourself out.
This is true. But I think that's also like then assuming as though like he goes to ground and then Barcenas is like, oh, okay, well then I'll continue to dribble. Yeah. Like it very much looked like I think Barcenas was squaring up to cross that ball. And so I think Rowe was trying to do the heroic block. And then I think Barcenas was just clever enough to do a little like chipped like dink touch.
So he just over his leg and gets around. I think
it's either that or just under his leg because it's an out of control slide tackle.
And then I think Torres, Gabi Torres from the left comes across, and we saw the replay on Fox. It looks like Graham Zusi doesn't see him until it's
that was
far too late.
You could have, that makes sense because that was a fairly common point in both the first and second halves. Was Graham Zusi maybe not seeing something or maybe not spotting something as quickly as he should have?
Wasn't it in like the first few minutes? Zusi is sort of caught out by a ball over the top. And I can't remember who the player
third minute.
Sneaking in behind
Camargo.
him. Yeah, third minute.
Camargo, the goal scorer.
And then Zusi misjudges the ball in the 19th minute in my notes, and he puts Omar Gonzalez in trouble. So there was a few Graham Zusi defensive mistakes. Okay, but this isn't over. Torres gets a shot in. Guzan saves it, but puts it back into traffic. So do we put blame on Guzan for not making sort of a safer save, or do we credit Guzan for managing to get any body part to it?
I think it's that. Because, again, it's not even that he, fails to parry it properly. It's basically he's covering the near post, that ball comes in, then he, quickly sidesteps, and the ball's already been struck. So it hits Guzan more than Guzan makes a save. Yeah. So, again, I think it's coming off of his chest, all he can do is try to keep the ball out of the net. And he does that, and I think he expects that one of the, 12 defenders in front of him will maybe stop somebody from shooting, and everybody is just a half step slow, a half step late.
That's
except for the Panamanian players.
Camargo reacts first, puts it past Brad Guzan
after a couple touches, and that's the thing is it's not like he just hits it one time into an open goal. And again, that's why I think it's not Brad Guzan's fault. I mean, it's Kellen Acosta who doesn't really track him.
Yeah, I think Donovan or Holden said that he fell asleep.
Yeah, I think they blamed all three. I think they blamed Kellen Rowe and Graham Zusi, and then they blamed Kellen Acosta.
So
but I would
all
also
the Kellens and all the Grahams.
Yeah, but I would also say you've got two center backs in there who also weren't really tracking anybody or stepping at anybody.
This will be my thing I want to rewatch when we see this, is where are Matt Beasler and Omar Gonzalez on this play? Because it comes the cross is kind of central, and Matt Beasler's not there on the left of centre side. And when the ball comes in, it's Zuzi, who ends up sort of loosely marking Gabby Torres and not Omar Gonzalez. So was it like was there a transition in play? Were they up there for a corner? Where was everybody, basically?
My guess, again, this is on like first viewing without watching the replays, is that they don't expect Kellen Rowe to get beat. And so I think as soon as Barcenas gets that ball past Rowe, they're scrambling to get back into the 6 and on top of the 6. And so they're not really focused on where people are. That's definitely the case for Graham Zusi, who only spots who is it who had the first shot?
Torres, who across him.
He only spots Torres like making that run when Torres has already started to make the run.
Yeah.
And that's why he's like not able to get to him and poke that ball away.
He ends up doing a weird sort of just like throw my body at it kind of thing. I think he goes the wrong way as well. Doesn't he try and block the wrong way?
Yeah, that could be. But so I think that's where they are, is basically they've kind of done that like, oh, okay, Kellen's got this under control. We'll turn and mark. Oh, he does not have it under control. Like, everybody scramble.
Okay, final thought before we end the quick take, hot take. What do we make of Bruce Arena here? Did he make any mistakes in the starting lineup? Did he make any mistakes in terms of his substitutions throughout the game?
I mean, I didn't love his substitutions. I can definitely say that. Juan Agudelo coming on for Joe Corona. I can't say one way or the other how I felt about Joe Corona, but I think maybe that tells you how I felt about Joe Corona.
Against Ghana, let's put it
Certainly.
that way,
So I can understand that substitution. I can understand Jordan Morris. I like Jordan Morris for Alejandro Bedoya. I don't love
That
Jazzy
wasn't even the
Zardes.
original plan, right?
No,
it was going to be Morris for Dwyer.
Yeah, but I wanted it to be Bedoya.
Yeah.
So I was happy that it was. And then I didn't really get the Zardes sub.
Right.
I don't think that really helped that much, and he did have a couple sloppy touches, a couple bad passes, and it just didn't seem like he was kind of up for it or kind of ready to go in this game, which I guess has maybe been the narrative for his season. I also think that it seemed like the United States were slow to react in the first half and kind of needed a little bit more oomph, a little bit more pressure, and it didn't feel like they had that in the second half. And so with that in mind, I am inclined to say that Arena maybe got some things wrong in this game.
Okay, so that's our quick take, hot take of USA 1, Panama 1. We're going to rewatch some of the action, and we'll be back later on today with the full review of USA Panama.